myself on mute again. Never fails. Okay. Okay. That should be good now. So anyway, welcome to Live with Rhea on Sunday night. You know, it's really nice to have y'all here. And it's really nice to be here tonight. I'm using the C920 webcam tonight because the other cameras just tax my CPU to the moon. And it's kind of like, you know, I just have to deal with it. So tonight's topic is going to be really nice. You know, we're going to talk about RFI. But first, I want to give a shout out to all my friends in Ukraine and all my friends from the Ukraine. And, you know, I want to talk to you all about a special, is it still no voice? Should be. Yeah, it's a couple minutes delayed. Yeah, so it should be noted that, and this is in relation to a special project I'm working on, but the station, radio station, shortwave station, WTWW, okay, they've been broadcasting messages to the Ukraine. Now, WTWW is one of those, you know, homegrown shortwave stations. I mean, of course, they do the Christian programming. Nothing wrong with that, you know. But they also do a lot of messages to the Ukraine. And I want to show you here what they're doing. So, and Silver Stacks Prepper with our first super chat. Thank you very much. I love you all. And I'm going to give you a highlight here in just un momento. But, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Silver Stacks, always a great fan of this channel. Thank you. So, and he's a friend of my friend. He's a fan of my friend Ives' channel, too, you know. Ask Ives Solar. See, I'm wearing a Field Day shirt today, okay? So, we're getting ready for Field Day soon. Anyway, so my friends at WTWW, okay, shortwave, they have been they've been really broadcasting messages to the Ukraine, and you know, they have a phone number you can call, right? Call 1-833-390-5085. Leave a message for Ukrainians to air on these shortwave frequencies. And 5085 and 9940. So they will be basically sending these messages. Now, when you hear this, you know, they basically tell you, say, talk to Ukrainians if you have something to say to the Russians, and they don't mind if you criticize Putin. You know, I criticize Putin. I think Putin is really getting himself into something, you know, that he more than he bargained for, to be honest. You know, and you know, it's not that I take sides in a war. I just think the whole thing of war is dumb. I think that, you know, I mean, the price of gas is one thing, you know. The price of everything's going to go up. The price of... I'm really, really hating what this is going to do to Dayton, you know, Dayton Hamvention. What's going to be happening with the price of gas and the attendance at Dayton Hamvention or the Hamfest. I can't imagine it'll be good at all. But anyway, if you want to say something, you know, get off your chest. Don't curse. That's the only thing they say, you know. Don't curse. Right? And they have a few things. And more importantly, if you know, the electric bills to run a 150 kilowatt shortwave transmitter is really high. So if you can afford something, you know, you could donate to them on their PayPal page, wtww.us. If not, that's okay. You know. They also have Bob Heil. He plays the organ on the shortwave station, and he also does a whole bunch of things. You know, I have a special project coming up with them. I know you want to hear about this, but I can't let the cat out the bag yet. But anyway, that'll be cool. So let's see here. Let me go back to OBS. I'm going to be rid of OBS in a couple days. Yeah, so, you know, yeah, I really think Putin's crazy. I think Putin
Putin's mentally ill. He needs help. He needs a therapy dog. He needs a hobby. You know, he needs help. They need to send him golfing or something. You know? Nah. So let me see here. Hi, Maria Jackson. How are you? I hope everything's good. Let's see who else is in the chat here. Let's see now. Submarine Radio Man. How you doing, buddy? Well, the audio issues are fixed. Jesse. POTA by example. You want a good interview, you go to his channel, WA7PB, POTA by example. He had Kat and myself on. We were talking about women in ham radio. We're talking about other stuff. Kat went on a priceless rant, okay? You have to see. Yeah. You know what? Talk to Minster. You know, talk to David. I'm pretty sure he'll work out something for you. You know, I don't know. I mean, he brought a number of different things. I bought this last year. Yeah, and I pay for this stuff. Okay, I don't think it's right to get this for free. I pay for all my field day and, clothing and stuff like that from AWRL. I do get books to give away to clubs, and I do give it away to clubs. And let's see here. Brian, 88GI. Joe, K0NEB from Nebraska. Yeah. And you know who else is from Nebraska? Larry the Cable Guy. And Joe showed me a funny commercial with Larry the Cable Guy. Crazy. Yeah, the gas prices went down a little bit because of the price of oil. I think everybody kind of like got over the shock and the oil companies stopped profiteering a little bit. But it's just been kind of like a whole adventure. I don't know. But I think as the spring maintenance comes along, that'll be their next excuse to hike it up again. And then the summer, because they're preparing for Memorial Day and summer travel season and everything. 409. We see 419 and 429 here in Jersey, the home of Taylor ham and pork roll. So, okay. All right, let's talk about tonight's topic. I'm sure all of you at one point or the other have had issues with noise. I know I have. I've had some really, really crazy incidents with noise. And tonight we're going to talk about them. And I hope I bring up the correct keynote here. I'm not really going to do, death by keynote or death by PowerPoint. But I am going to play a few slides. I am going to do mostly talking. And I'm going to be doing some show and tell. This is how we roll. And, that's generally how we are. So, is going to be like finding and fixing RF interference. Now, I must say mega thanks to I took a lot of this material. I didn't really, steal it. I've been reading all of their stuff from the AWRL RFI EMC committee, and they've kind of really distilled this down to where, you're getting it as good as it should be. So, without further ado, so we talk about finding and fixing RF interference. So what really is RFI? Okay, so it's basically unwanted interaction between all of your systems. All the electronics, to be honest. Like you have I don't know. I mean, as hams we know about noise, right? We know that like the power line noise and all that stuff like that. And we don't like noise, right? It lessens the enjoyment of our hobby. But, sometimes your neighbors might make an enemy out of ham radio because we're interfering with things. We're getting into the telephones, we're getting into televisions, we're, frankly, even your family members. How many of you, I hear guys say, well, their wife don't like ham radio. And this is yet another reason. So, yeah. Let's see here. Duran Duran remake of 180 songs. Okay. What causes RFI? So you have several components, right? You have the RF sources, right? You have which basically an RF source is a transmitter, right? I mean, it's not officially a transmitter, but it's a transceiver. And then you have the victim, which is the receiver, okay? there are several modes with which RFI can get into things. And, you know, they're radiated, okay? And I'll show you the difference in a second. They're conducted, right? And they're sometimes induced and, and they have capacitive interference possible. You have two main types. You have differential mode and you have common mode. But you also have several ways that interference can manifest itself, can happen. You have spurious emissions, you have overload, you have external interference from like power lines and stuff like that. And you have intermod, okay, intermodulation. So let's talk about radiated versus conducted noise, right? And let's see if this still works. Yes. So the radiated noise goes through space, right? I mean, when we mean space, we mean the open air. Conductive is through wires, cables, etc. And capacitors, inductive basically, induce like basically electromagnetic induction, and capacitive basically electrostatic, right? So you'll find these are the main modes of radiation versus conduction. Now, what you got to know here is that the two types of transmission. You have differential mode, right, where you have perfectly balanced currents, right? You notice they go forward and backward, and the signals stay within the conductor there, okay? And then you have common mode, okay? So common mode is like the most problematic one that we have, okay? Let's see here. Davis, some places in Jersey are not off the parkway and not off the turnpike, I live in Northwest Jersey, which is like, there is no turnpike and parkway up here. So common mode has equal voltage on all the conductors, and that means there's no voltage because voltage really is potential difference, right? And this is how you define common mode here. So let's see what else we're doing here. Okay. Then you have the spurious emissions, right? Spurious emissions, Part 97 defines some limits for spurious emissions. I mean, generally you cannot, you cannot avoid them, right? There's no such thing as a pure signal because everything has a little bit of what they call nonlinearity. And generally you produce harmonics with every transmission. You can't get away from it, okay? The legal limits per Part 97 are 40 decibels below the fundamental and less than 25 microwatts, okay, at VHF. I have another video where ARRL is testing radios. They tested my radio. I'm probably next Hampest I'm going to bring a couple of Baofengs and to show them. But I also have equipment to test. I just like when the lab does it. I have a whole rig. I have a spectrum analyzer. I have an RF sampler and everything. So I'm good to go. Now this is more of an issue from ham radio, right? So ham radio is the transmitter. It's not the victim, but it does affect us. Okay. Baofeng used to be really bad, okay? I mean, there's spurious emissions from a Baofeng, and it used to be really bad. But you know what? Of late, they've really cleaned up. I'm really impressed, and especially with radios like the GT5R, which are true blue ham radios. They're kind of, they've gotten really, really good. And I see W1VLF knows a lot about this stuff, so nice to have you on board. Nice to have you on board tonight. I hope life is good in Connecticut. I hope you didn't get too much snow. All right. But yeah. Now he's been my go-to at the league for some stuff for some time. So let's see here now. So sometimes you have the fundamental actually that overloads things because some electronics just really cannot handle. They cannot handle very high RF. I mean, and the fundamental signal, basically the desired signal gets rectified in some like audio amplifiers, right? Not harmonics, not undesirable. It gets rectified in audio amplifiers or digital circuitry. It tends to get in those digital circuitries. And sometimes it just causes things to go berserk, you know, because you have an additional stray current induced by the RF that's in there. Now, of course, you have external interference, right? It could be anything from cable TV, electronic devices, solar power, power lines, BPL. Well, not really anymore because Ed Hare took care of that, right? Now, I'll tell you something about cable TV. If you ever know about cable TV, you will know that the frequencies that cable TV uses sometimes cross with the ham bands. You'll find that one issue in Trinidad I had with one of my longtime friends who is now Silent Key, Sankar Prasad, 9Y4SP, he had a problem where he was on 2 meters and he was getting into the neighbor's cable TV. And I think it was channel 18. That was back in the 90s and the days of analog cable. Okay, you know, today everything is digital, right? I'll give you a story about digital in a second. So, Sankar, he had, he got terrified, you know, and he was like, the neighbors kicked a whole fuss about that. What happened was that the neighbors apparently was using an illegal hookup, okay? They hooked up, they shared the cable, they bought a splitter from the electronics store, and then they hooked that up with the cheapest RG 59, not even RG6 cable, okay? Yeah, Paul, we're going to talk about grow lights, trust me, okay? Especially what's going on in New Jersey these days, right? We just legalized it in New Jersey, okay? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, so he got scared, but eventually, you know, he called the cable company and he talked to them, and eventually the neighbors got so, they got busted, you know. Cable, you have to be careful of it. You use proper cable. Sometimes you might have to use shielded cable to get rid of the interference. And I had a story with cable. So this was back before, well, actually Service Electric was the cable company back in the day. Back in the day, it was like 2012, I think it was, okay? Service Electric, we'll talk about the distance with grow lights. That's coming, don't worry. Back in the day, I had a problem with cable TV. So my cable TV was digital back and since 2012. That's when we got rid of cable a few years ago. And then Service Electric, I was having pixelation on some of the channels. And then Service Electric, they brought some cable guys and they sat in my driveway and they hooked up and they watched TV all day to check the signal quality because I complained to the state, you know, the Board of Public Utilities. And they came and they did that. I made friends with the engineering department that way. And they eventually what we found out was my BlackBerry, because back then I did have a BlackBerry. Anybody remember BlackBerry? Of course you remember BlackBerry, right? I had a BlackBerry, and the BlackBerry was on 860 megahertz, the cellular band, and placed close to my cable box, which was a TiVo running cable cards. It leaked in and caused interference. Well, boy, I was just, you know, I was just flabbergasted. But, you know, we figured that out. So that was my story. Yeah. So external interference, you know, you have like a number of electronic devices. You have the grow lights. You have regular LED lights, especially from, you know, from the Far East, where they're a lot of times they don't really care about regulations. But now they kind of do, because in my other video that I mentioned, Amazon is cracking down, and they care about money, okay? Amazon was cracking down. Anything without an FCC ID, gone. Not allowed to be sold. So a lot of them forced to get testing. Some companies, some unscrupulous companies, just slapped FCC labels and made up things, and, you know, but most of them actually, they found religion, okay? Yeah. And then the final one is Intermod. You know, so basically you have signals that are mixed together in a nonlinear system. And you know what? This could be aided by a metal rain gutter, like a rusty fence or something like that. That helps too, you know, and that causes intermod. So let's talk about some of these electronic devices. So, yes, Joe, you know what, Joe? I'm getting fiber. Planet Networks is coming to town, and I'm getting fiber. So electronics, particularly those with switch and power supplies, right? So switch mode power supplies, as you know, they're the technical marvel of power technology. They've made everything nice and light and small. Instead of a big honking power supply with a big metal iron transformer, you have a neat little wall wart that fits in your pocket. Okay? And especially now with gallium nitride technology, they're again really small and really powerful and really efficient too. They save energy. But you know, some of them are really poorly designed, they're poorly filtered, they run the semiconductors hard, they switch and they produce all sorts of harmonics. Okay? And that's where you get all of these switch and power supplies that tend to be problematic. Computers too, not only the power supplies and computers, but also the, you ever looked at the FCC label on a computer? It'll say Class B computing devices. So basically the FCC now pays attention to computers. They're FCC Part 15, okay? But they have to undergo certification. And you know, a lot of them are like self-declaration of compliance, you know, but they get a test lab to basically certify. They don't have to go through like rigorous things like, you know, like a transceiver or something. And they think Paul could tell us some stories, I guess. I think he works in testing. I'm not sure what kind of testing he works in. Plasma TV is the mother of all RFI generators, you know. Plasma TVs are terrible. Plasma TVs are doubly terrible because not only do some of them have switch and power supplies, but that plasma, you know, when you ignite that plasma in in the TV itself, that thing generates RFI through the front of the screen. Oh man, that thing would knock out, you know, that thing was so bad, it'd knock out even like DSL and stuff like that, you know. But plasma TVs actually they're mostly gone because OLED and LED and LCD and everything have been, you know, they supersede them. Then you have lighting, okay? So there are two types of major lighting problems that are growing today, quite literally. You have the street lights, because all the street lights are going LED, and some of them are absolute trash, okay? Then you have grow lights. Those of you in New Jersey, Colorado, Washington, okay? You know what I'm talking about, okay? Let's see here. The grow lights. So in New Jersey, they legalized the, you know, the plant, right? It's a plant, okay? I have nothing against the plant, okay? I think that, you know, it's freedom, right? But they legalized it, and then they have all these shops with licenses now. There's a big facility up by me. They have grow lights, and they're kind of just, you know, they're just really, they're RFI nightmares, you know, if you get some of them. I mean, some, especially, again, some of the bad switch and power supplies. And it's not so much the light, it's the power supply, okay? Because these things need monstrous amounts of power. Some of these power supplies are LED, right? And then some of these are still halogen lights, right? And yeah, Joe, yeah, exactly. It's the ballast, okay? It's the ballast. You know, they're switching power supplies, basically, some of them, and they're terrible. They're terrible RFI generators. But, you know, it used to be that industry was pretty much, it was illegal, so the government really, you know, I mean, if you report them, you run the risk of somebody coming to your house and, you know, telling you that how, that don't make this more of a problem than it needs to be, okay? And then you would have to just sit down and shut up. But otherwise, you know, they kind of nowadays when they're legal, you kind of have to, you know, you could work with them. New Jersey, we have recreational and medicinal. Colorado, they have the same thing. I think Washington has the same thing too, Washington State. I think a bunch of other states have medical and such like that. So they're doing that. Power lines. Power lines are problematic, but, you know, normally functioning power lines are not really a problem. Unless there are these big high tension lines that if you live right under high tension lines, forget it. If you are a ham, don't live next to these big transmission lines, okay? We had a big power line project that wanted to roll through town, go less than a mile from me. We showed up in numbers, and we basically opposed this thing to the hilt. We had all the farmers come out in their, you know, their dirty farm trucks. And those trucks are real squatted trucks, okay? Not like the fashion fad that these guys have. These guys' trucks got squatted because they had a whole bunch of fertilizer and hay and crops inside of it, okay? And equipment. And they were towing, you know, pulling tractors and all sorts of stuff. You know, it's not like these guys with their squatted trucks just to look cool, but they really look stupid. Solar panels. We're going to talk about solar panels. And I'm going to show you a QST article about solar panels, right? Electric fences. Yes, and typical grow lights run at the 600 to 1000 watt level. Exactly, right? Electric fences, the typical electric fence you would hear would be like a tick, 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 tick. And usually they're arcing against like a piece of brush. You know, you might have a loose connection. They're not properly earthed. They're not properly, you know, set up. They might have a piece of loose brush or something. Because one that's wired up properly and clear of all the vegetation shouldn't be giving you that. You have furnace controllers. A lot of these furnaces and stuff are basically, you know, they're huge RFI generators because they have switch and power supplies and PWM. Basically, PWM is like a, you know, variable speed motor control. They basically adjust, like, they switch on and off rapidly. Okay. Are they going to hear their... Okay, that's great. I have underground power lines where I live. Okay, thankfully. My distribution lines, it's a good and bad because they kind of... the power lines up by me are... I don't know. They're kind of... The power lines, the underground, that's good. I have a friend who actually worked for the cooperative, the power co-op, Sussex Rural, and he wired up my development. And he was kind of like, you know, yeah, I kind of stepped on a high voltage line once. Ouch. 7200 volts is not fun. That's one thing. But the other thing about them is that if you're running new utilities like fiber, you're going to have to dig, you know. And Planet Networks, who is running fiber up where I live, they want to dig. And they had to buy like a ditch witch. So they're coming, but they're coming slowly. So how do you find if RF interference? So what I did was I'll show you guys a blog post that I have here that I have did. But if it's in your house, right, the first thing you do is you turn off the main breaker, okay? So you switch everything completely off and you run your radio from batteries, okay? And then, you know, see if it goes away, okay? Turn off all the UPS, all the batteries, everything except the radio. You want everything off, okay? If it's power line type noise, and if it's a 60 hertz hum, chances are if you shut off, and it's in your house, chances are if you shut off everything, you're going to find something. Next thing you do is you basically, if it goes away, turn back on the main breaker, and then start turning off branch breakers one by one until it's gone. When it's gone, you found your culprit, all right? Another method I used was I walked around with either AM radio or my ham radio, and the ICOM 705 that I have here is actually perfect for this. I believe Ham Radio Crash Course showed where he was walking around with a little loop antenna on this radio, and you know, you'll see where it is. Now, some circuits, I have a story about the LED bulb, and I'll show you here. Let me show you this. So this was a Cree bulb. This was a BR30, okay? Oh, I still have your comment up. Yeah, this was a BR30 Cree bulb, right? Yeah, Last Man Standing's kind of interesting because they're in a studio and they have a lot of lights. They have HMI lights, which are basically, you know, really bright but synchronized film lighting, and they have a lot of ballasts and controllers and such for that. And there's just a lot of equipment there. So in this blog post, I said I became scared, to be honest, because I turned on 40 meters and there was AC buzz all over. I thought one of the neighbors got something, because I live in a really quiet area, right? And I really enjoy the quiet I have. My fear was that the neighbors bought something, you know, and I wouldn't be able to do it. Or is it because we bought a new fridge too? And then I went about finding. So I took the shortwave radio and verified the noise was there. I actually used my Kenwood D74, which has general coverage mode. And then I shut off the main breaker and the noise is gone. So it was in this house, all right? And then, and I'll show, you know what, let me share the blog post. It's on n2rj.com. And I will show you here. Yeah. Yeah. So, long story short, this was a bulb, okay? This was a bulb. This was a LED bulb. Well, it was probably two LED bulb because I was on a dimmer, okay? Let's see. LED. There we go. Okay. So let me see here. Yeah, solar panels don't make noise. That's correct. Solar inverters and optimizers and the associated hardware make noise. Okay? But let's see here. Where's my Chrome? You know, I use okay. Is it here? No. Okay. I have to find it. Live streaming? Nope. 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 Okay. Hang on a second. Okay. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So, is it this one? No, it's not. Is it this one? Yep, there we go. Okay. Right. So this one here, and then, so I noticed that in the living room, it was producing more noise. So I began pointing to more and more stuff. Things one by one, TV, UPS, Blu-ray. Yeah, I still have a Blu-ray. You know what? I watch movies on Blu-ray because streaming, they can revoke your streaming privilege, and I prefer to have physical media. Then I shut off the lights and the noise was silent. So what happened was, yeah, you know what, Paul? We'll definitely talk. Let's schedule something, okay? I want to have you on the channel if you want. Paul has a channel too, so look at him. He does some interesting stuff. W1VLF. So I thought it was, so it could be either two things when I found the lights, okay? It was either the dimmer switch, one, or the bulbs. The dimmer switch was at that time, it was a Lutron with the remote control, and it was really nice. I've since replaced that with something I could control over the internet. But this one, we actually, so LED and CFL lights, you know, they get a bad rap for interference, and rightfully so. AWL Lab and others have basically shown them to be very prolific noise generators. But I tested bulbs before I put them on. This one, this Cree BR30 light was the problem, okay? And this one, it actually took a little longer to start. So what I think happened I removed it, by the way, and the noise was gone. What I think happened with this bulb is probably one of the capacitors inside got defective. It started to leak or something. And that capacitor, between that capacitor failing, it kind of seemed to me that it would generate a little more RF interference. So I actually emailed Cree, right? And then because this noise only started happening after the bulbs were installed for a year. And Cree actually took back the bulbs, right? And Cree actually apologized. It's amazing. They apologized. They took back the bulbs. And then they ended up putting, they sent me 2 new bulbs. Okay? And these new bulbs were great. These bulbs are still good up to this day. So I don't know. Maybe they had a bad batch of capacitors. Who knows? But they said they wanted the bulb back to study. Okay? And, yeah, but somebody said in the comments, people said, well, the dimmer switches, of course, but somebody said, I've had no luck with Cree lamps, so 2 of 8 failed in less than a year. So apparently Cree has a problem, okay? I have none against Cree. I use some of their lights. I use some of the others. I use mostly Philips in the house, right? Philips seems to be good. They seem to be reputable. So, yeah, smart meters pose 2 problems. Some of them have like electronics in them, but most of the smart meters, some of them, I'll tell you about smart meter. Yep, and LED bulbs have a power supply. Although some of them are kind of skipping the power supply entirely and just basically acting as droppers. If you look at bigclive.com on his channel, you will see that how he talks about, he takes some of these apart. It's really fun. I actually have something I'm going to do with something on Big Clive channel. So yeah, how to fix a lot of things, right? Generally, for a lot of devices, and you know this, you can't get out without an antenna. Okay, you can't get a signal out. Similarly, noise can't get out in a lot of cases without an antenna. Okay, and I want to show you all something here. Okay, so generally, if you can't really cure an RFI problem, right? If the device is noisy and it's spewing stuff through the output ports, you want to basically put a common mode choke on them, and basically that's just this. Okay, so it's basically you have a ferrite and you put some coils through them, or you can do a 10-turn core. I believe that's for coax. So when you have common mode currents on your coax, you do like a 10-turn core of coax. You could get a commercially available filter. I believe Palomar Engineers has them, DX Engineering and such like that. You need a few hundred to a few thousand ohms of impedance. Not impedance, okay? Impedance. I got schooled early on for that. You notice that when you have like computer cables, like the video cables, HDMI cables and such like that, they come with a little lump on the end, right? Those are usually ferrites, and those are added for FCC compliance, okay? Let's see here. So the Palomar Engineers, they have the things. So anyway, power lines, okay? Let's see what these power lines are doing. I think that this is probably why power line noise happens. Do you think? I don't know. Maybe it does. I don't know. But, could be. Especially that pulse type of noise. It's fine. So the first thing is power line problems is the power companies do take it seriously, okay? But, it's best if you do your, if you do your legwork, okay, you'll have a better chance of success. Do not touch, okay? Do not touch your equipment, ever. You have lethal voltage levels, okay? When I mean lethal, I mean thousands of volts. 12 kilovolts phase to phase, and 7.2 kilovolts. That's 7,200 volts and 12,000 volts, okay? It will not think about killing you. It will not think twice, okay? Do not touch your equipment from afar. You go from afar. You can find the pole without touching the equipment, right? And you do it in either of several ways. So the first way, and like I said, you know, you can get a handheld radio, use an arrow antenna, right? Or one of these, you know, directional Yagi antennas and start pointing around, okay? You put your radio in AM mode, right? And you will probably hear one that's arcing. Some of them might be quite visible, okay? Some of them, you will actually see it sparking on a pole. You know, it's kind of interesting. MFJ actually does make, however, an ultrasonic receiver that's used. What this does is that this will actually, let me see here, yeah. This will actually, and this is, you know, MFJ is not paying me to do this, okay? But they have a dish with a 40 kilohertz ultrasonic receiver, and you can actually hear the corona discharge, and you know, you can hear it just like sizzling and whatever. So it's tuned to 40 kilohertz, and you can hear. And they have the dish, and it'll pinpoint this to just basically within 7 inches. Okay, so it's really nice. And they actually have you know, they have a bunch of different accessories. You could use a Yagi antenna as well too. You can use a loop. I remember the early days of Ed Hare going around with his loop and such, and antennas driving around. You know, W1 VLF will tell you. And you know, it's kind of, it's really interesting that this simple equipment, right? So once you do find it, right, you know, make sure you find it. Call the power company, okay? Now, I repeatedly get requests from people that were asking, well, you know, I need a specific contact at the power company. I'm like, no, you don't, right? There are a few things you could do. I mean, the first one is, obviously, if it's something arcing, you know, you wanna call the main number and ask for street light out. You know, they have a street light out number that, and you know, you can actually get them to respond that way. You might need to be persistent, right? You know, a lot of these power companies, they might tend to brush you off first thing, but if you do your legwork, you know, yeah, true. The dish is good for pinpointing the noise, but it's not the first tool to use. Correct. I mean, it is a tool. It's expensive, I think. You know, but yeah, you know, first thing I would listen. I mean, you know, Ham Radio Crash Course did something. Josh, he did something where the power company came and they hooked into his antennas and all sorts of stuff. I think that's kind of excessive. Really, when I've helped friends, I just took a Yagi antenna and just pointed around, you know, outside to see, you know, is equipment we already had. So sometimes the power company might ask to visit your home, right? But, you know, most of them don't. I mean, if you point out a pole that's obviously defective, they will just come out and fix it, you know, because, I mean, to be quite honest, that arcing is wasting electricity and it's costing them money. It's also reducing the reliability of their system, and it might cause a fire, especially if you live somewhere like California where you have wildfires, okay? And you don't want those sparks to come down. The very last resort, I would say, is you can file a complaint with the FCC. The FCC has a complaints number, and the power companies do take the FCC seriously. It should not be your first line of defense. It should not be your first line of offense. Rather, it should be basically after you've exhausted your remedies with the power company. The ARRL Lab gives advice on that. If you're a member of ARRL, you can talk to them. I don't expect in most cases that they will actually go and, you know, talk to the power company on your behalf. unless it's a really bad case, right? But they will help you. They'll guide you along. You know, that's what your membership dollars are for. Okay. So, solar power. Okay, let's talk about solar power. So solar power has gotten a bad rap of being prolific RFI generators. Okay. And it's probably not so much the fact that you're using solar power, but because you use so many switching power supplies in a typical solar installation. I'm going to show you a QST article about solar, right? Now, it's important to note that these days solar has all sorts of financial things tied up in it. For example, a lot of people lease solar panels, right? So they basically contract with a company. I personally, I think the solar lease is a terrible deal. You know, Dave Ramsey calls it a fleece, okay? But a lease is a terrible deal. I would never lease solar panels. Yeah, you know, lawnmower, if RFI from underground power lines happens, you have bigger problems, okay? Because the dirt will block some of the RF, but, you know, and it's something, when it's so bad, I think your lights are going to be flickering at that point, okay? Yeah. I'll show you the QST article. It's freely available on the web. It's not just members only. Although, I would encourage you to support the ARRL, by the way. So, if this is managed by a company, or if your panels are leased, you know, they may not allow you to, to mess with it, right? So you ask them. Although some of them are actually, you know, some of them are actually cooperative, you know. Like Solar Edge has worked on a number of things. I mean, you know, Solar Edge kind of has a reputation where they've been cooperating with us. Yeah. If it's yours, okay? If it's your neighbors, then that's a different story, okay? If it's your neighbors, you're going to have to be nice to your neighbors, because your neighbors can just refuse and say nope, and then they can go, because, and there's little you can do, because the FCC really doesn't have a lot of, you know, a lot of strict regulations as people believe that they do, okay? Always ask permission before setting foot on their property. Never trespass on their property, okay? Because that's the surest way to get them to basically never talk to you again, and you still stuck with the RFI. The lab, the ARRL lab, has a lot of experience with, you know, these type of problems. I mean, you know, not every case is going to be successful, but there are a lot of cases that are. So let me show you the QST article here. And it's called Can Ham Radio and Solar Power Exist? Right? And it is, let's see here. Is it here? I really need, oh, there we go. Okay. Can ham radio and solar power coexist, right? And this is not just the Coexist bumper sticker you see on people's car, okay? So this is by Kilo One Kilo Papa. So he's talking about, you know, he retired and he wanted to put solar on his house and such like that. And he's a contester from YCCC. I wouldn't hold that against him, though. Yeah, you know, the microinverters could be a problem, yeah. And then the Sunny Boy SMA. SMA makes some decent inverters, I think. So Tony, you know, and you see his solar panels there. So these days, a lot of these solar power systems have what you call an Mppt controller, maximum power point tracking, right? What they do is they basically have a computerized algorithm in them that will track the voltage and current on a solar panel and basically... yeah. Yes, ARRL is worth it. I clearly is worth it. Right? Yeah, antennas parallel to power lines could pick up RFI, but really antennas near the power lines will pick up RFI. So yeah, so this guy had a solar system. Yeah. Right, exactly. The problem is not the cheap ones. The problem is the poor quality ones, and the ones that are not, you know, that are made to not really comply with radiated power limits. I mean, I don't think there really are much of any limits, to be honest.
But the FCC is kind of murky on it too. So anyway, the Mppt controller, right? Maximum power point tracking. They have you have two types. You have the microinverter type that K6YYL was talking about, where basically you have a little inverter that sits behind the panel, and then that sends AC current down the line, and then that goes into like a breaker box, and then that will feed into the grid via your panel. Okay, that's one type. Those are usually made by a company called Enphase, right? Enphase is one of the major manufacturers of them. The other type is a central inverter. So what happens is the solar panels in a string send down DC power down to an inverter that could be either on the side of the wall or inside your house, right? And that's one way. So you have a string of solar panels. Now, these days it's more than just that, okay? You have several components in a home solar system. You have the panels. Some systems have what you call optimizers, okay? So optimizers are a different beast, because what they do is, in addition, so think of the Mppt controller doing, adjusting the voltage, the current, to get the voltage and current just right for the whole array, okay? The optimizers do that per panel, right? So during the day when your panel gets shaded, like the sun moves, well, the earth moves and the sun, the position of the sun in the sky relative to us is such that maybe a tree shadow starts to go on the panel. And then you will notice that when you have panels in a series string, that you shade one panel, you shade a piece of one panel, the whole array suffers greatly. So what these optimizers attempt to do is they attempt to compensate for that, right? And they work really well to do that. The problem is that they are switching power supplies and they generate RF. So you'll find that here, yeah, yep, there are no radiated limits below 30. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what Ed Hare was telling me the other day. I was talking on a solar power a problem. So what Tony did was, so this is how his system is set up here, okay? He has the whole series DC connection, and all the solar panels are in series. So some of these solar arrays are like 600 to 1,000 volts, right? What he did was he took the wires, instead of being straight together, he twisted them together, right? And the twists actually caused some of the currents to cancel out. He also got ferrite beads, and then used those as the common mode chokes that I mentioned earlier, and put those in between the panels, with the optimizers. And that brought things down substantially, okay? Let's see here. So he's given a little more detail. He got ferrite beads, ferrite toroids, and basically he took the DC leads from the optimizers and a safety ground, okay, and basically routed them, made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 turns, 10 turns, okay, of the 3 conductors, spaced 12 inches apart. And then that whole thing went through, metal conduit. So metal conduit is good because metal will shield this, right? And then he actually put some more ferrite beads, okay? And then, he brought down his system. You see here an example of the number 10 wire. So what you might have to do is you might have to buy some wire and then put some MC4 connectors on them, right? And then you put these through the beads, okay? So, you basically put the wire through first, and then you crimp on the MC4 connectors. And he shows some examples of this here. You see the optimizers over there, okay? And he twisted the lines, I know this seems all simple, but it really did wonders, okay? He gets very minimal interference, and, he's still got his solar power,
So this was a really nice case of where solar power, was kind of rocking, and I kind of want to show you this here again because I totally missed. But yeah, so basically his solar system here, right? And then you see the optimizers there in a string. Then you see the central inverter, right? To the central inverter, and he did the twisted wiring, and he did the toroids and such like that. Okay. Do any of these modifications lower power output? Actually, no, they do not. Okay, so that's the beauty of this. No, because you're not touching the current through the wire, and this is DC, it will absolutely not lower the power output at all. Right? All it does is it actually blocks the RF, and it will definitely not lower the power output. So he actually did safety ground from the racks, and he did 10 turns with these bifilar 10 turns of 3 conductor wire, so the 2 DC and the ground through the toroids, and then he put some beads from the inverter output, and he used a solar edge system, and before his meter. He must use snap-ons because you need a meter pull to do this. And then, yeah, you can see an example of it here, right? 3 bifilar turns here, So Jason, the only thing, well, thank you, Robert. That's really nice to hear, okay? Used to be SWL, I think you meant, right? Not SWR. You'd be into SWR? So, yeah. So, Jason, you might have a little point. They might, due to the increased length of the wire, you might have a teeny tiny little insignificant drop. But if you size the wire correctly, you're not going to have that problem, I think, And you can see here, you have the toroids, and you see the twists in the wire too, right? So this was a really nice case of how it all worked out. Yeah, got it right that time. Yeah. Yep. So that's solar. I mean, so solar is not the end of the world. I like solar power, right? I really I really like that I could get free electricity from the sun. One thing, I talked about electric fences already. Old TV Pre-Amplifiers. Okay, so back in the days of antenna TV, there'll be a little box up on the up on the roof, right? And you'll find yeah, the voltage drop is really not much at all. So you'll find, like, I'll show you some of these here. These channel master units and such like that. I had a really sensitive one with a gallium arsenide transistor, really sensitive, like 0.4 dB of noise figure, which is ridiculous. I was pulling in stations from New York and Philly. Yeah, but anyway, you have one of these old ones, right? Some of them actually are defective and they oscillate, right? And when they oscillate, they cause interference. If you have one that you're not using, turn it off, just, and if you can, take it down, because it might be affected by a strong signal nearby, and, it'll be there happily spewing out RF, So anyway, yeah, those should be disposed of appropriately. So the last thing is living with noise. If you're living with noise, right? Noise blankers, what they do is they basically shut off the receiver instantaneously to shut off noise. Like, for example, they're really effective with the electric fences. So if your neighbor has, because I have neighbors who have farms and horses and stuff like that. I have a horse barn too. Yeah, right, the 300 ohm TV line amps, yeah. use a noise blanker to take out the noise. You could apply filters on your radio. Now, Flex Radio has something called a wideband noise blanker, WNB. I think I'll do a Flex Radio episode, and I'll show you all the features of Flex. But it has wideband noise blanker, which could completely take out some types of power line noise. Adjust your operating habits and times. I mean, extreme times call for extreme measures, okay? Yeah, we do. Yeah, of course. I mean, I should know. At least I get, I'm a big over-the-air TV buff. Like I said, I have a low noise preamplifier and 16 bay antenna. So the other thing you could do, you could operate a station remotely. I mean, there are other remote stations. In some cases, you might have to move, but I hope it doesn't come to that. So I really, appreciate you guys joining me tonight. I think it was good. Next week, I'm going to be trying a new streaming rig, so I'm hoping I don't have any issues with it. I'm going to, have a separate hardware encoder that I'm going to be start using. I really appreciate all you guys joining this live stream tonight. Thank you very much. Next week, so I did post up a poll, right, this week. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the next topic, which is, I'll just bring it up here. The next topic is going to be, what was it? I'm going to do a whole episode on solar, like, on types of solar and, connecting panels in series and parallel and such like that, especially with regard to ham radio. And that should be a fun episode, right? And then I'll do a Flex Radio episode further down the line. I am working on a few things. I can't talk about some of it right now. And some of it has to do with, other things that I'll be getting, other types of media, and other types of things. So anyway, continue to have a great Sunday night, what's left of it anyway. This has been Live with Rhea. I'll see you around. Peace and 73s. Pray for Ukraine, okay? And like I said, you check out WTWW.us. You will see their hotline number to call and leave a message for Ukraine or leave a message for Vladimir Putin. Tell him to get the hell out. All right? Don't say it that way, okay? Tell him to get out. They don't want cursing or any bad language. Peace and 73s. I will see y'all again sometime.